In a previous video, we looked at some of the strands of ecologism. And ecologism, like feminism and nationalism, is one of these cross-cutting ideologies that can adapt itself to a number of existing ideologies. The first one we looked at was conservative or right-wing ecologists. The three elements of that were fascist ecologism, traditional or soft ecologism, and neoliberal or green capitalism. Very reformist strand of ecologism, another enlightened anthropocentrism, would set some limits to growth, but weak sustainability and a lot of concern for future generations. But essentially, the right-wing ecologists would seek to reconcile or balance ecology with capitalist modernity. Three other ideologies that ecologism was compatible with was clearly socialism, anarchism, and ecofeminism. And these are grouped together called the social ecologists. And these three left-wing strands, they would all believe that environmental degradation is caused by existing social organization, although they have different priorities what they mean by social organization. But what they have in common is they all advocate radical or revolutionary social change. For eco-socialists, as we've seen, is the abolition of capitalism. Capitalism is the enemy of the environment. There's capitalism's rapaciousness that leads to the destruction of the environment. For eco-anarchism, is the abolition of authority and the state, and society should be organized around anarchist principles, small decentralized communities that have natural balance and harmony. And for feminists, it's the existence of patriarchy, that men seek to rule women and nature at the same time. And if you get rid of patriarchy and have a matriarchal society, it will be much more in tune with nature. So all of these four strands are enlightened anthropocentrics to some degree. However, there is another strand over here of deep ecologists who would reject all these previous strands as being tainted by anthropocentrism. Similar to how radical feminists would disagree with all other strands of feminism as not being radical enough because of their ignorance of patriarchy. And deep ecologists would say that you cannot be in any way anthropocentric and be ecologically sound at the same time. So deep ecologists reject all other approaches as being tainted by anthropocentrism. So deep ecology rejects all other existing political ideologies or attachments to it, whether reformist, right-wing ecologism, or even those who advocate radical social change, such as the social ecologists. They're all tainted by anthropocentrism. Deep ecologists, again, would argue if you're tainted by anthropocentrism, regardless of how radical you feel you are, you still see humans as having a priority, as the top of the food chain, no matter how much you try and reconcile it to the needs of the planet. Deep ecologists would adopt this full ecocentric approach, seeing humans as merely another species or as another part of the natural world, alongside all the other plants and species, animate and inanimate objects that exist there. Deep ecologists would argue that what is needed is a new way of looking at the world, a new relationship between humans and nature, and a complete move away from our mechanistic view towards a new paradigm shift, towards a new ecological consciousness. Much of this echoes the fundamentalist Marxist position, the revolutionary Marxists, that what we need to have is a complete social revolution, a move away from the existing structure, a new paradigm shift, a new way of looking at the world. And again, it consciously echoes it, a new ecological consciousness. So for deep ecologists, even radical social change is not enough. We need a paradigm shift. And they favor complete ecocentrism, biocentric equality, which we've come across before in the ecologism and environmental ethics, and they advocate a radical holism, the complete oneness of things. Deep ecologists argue that nature has an intrinsic or inherent value in its own right, not simply its instrumental value to humans. This can be seen in Leopold's land ethic. And a nice phrase of Ness is that all species have equal right to live and bloom. Some of the strategies advocated by deep ecologists would be bioregionalism, where the earth should be divided up into areas or regions which have similar environmental needs and wants, rather than our little world of nation states which we studied in nationalism. Simple living, a return to nature, treading lightly on the earth, small self-sufficient communities, similar to eco-anarchism. Wilderness preservation, wilderness areas has a right to exist and bloom as an inherent right in itself, not simply for its instrumental values to humans. We shouldn't keep these manicured parks and wildlife areas because they're essentially, deep ecologists would say, we're keeping them for the benefit of humans, so we can drive through them, so we can camp there, so we can enjoy them. That wildernesses have a right as part of nature to exist on their own right rather than their instrumental value to us. And a final strategy, which is one which is quite controversial but quite popular among deep ecologists and other people as well, which would be population control. That the Earth cannot sustain continued population growth due to the limited resources. So strategies that deep ecologists would advocate: wilderness preservation, population control, simple living, and bioregionalism. However, deep ecologism, like radical feminism, has been subject to criticism, criticism from other ecologists as well. The other strands, the enlightened anthropocentrics, would deny what deep ecologists would say, that you cannot be ecological and anthropocentric at the same time. The other strands would say you can reconcile human and environmental needs. The social ecologists, through their version of radical social change, the right-wing ecologists through reformist approach. They've also been criticized in their approach to environmental ethics, in that ethics cannot be non-anthropocentric, as the argument goes, as morality itself is a human construct, and the terms good and bad are only meaningful when applied to humans. Deep ecologism has also been criticized for its rejection of rationalism and the Enlightenment, and it's been seen as very much anti-science, embracing at its extreme end a mysticism of what Bookchin calls vulgar Californian spiritualism and eco-lala. And then it has been criticized as being impractical, certainly politically. In a modern democratic society, for example, standing before the electorate and advocating we're going to deliver zero growth, or we're going to deindustrialize or de-urbanize, is not going to prove terribly popular, and thus this approach would then limit the effectiveness of deep ecology and presumably limiting the goals it would like to achieve. So going back to our original grid or chart, which is meant to go from sort of very light green to very deep green, we have the enlightened anthropocentrics, the reformist ones, particularly right-wing. Then you have the social ecologists, slightly deeper green, who advocate radical social change. But then deep ecologists would say there is a break, that you cannot be ecologically sound and tainted by anthropocentrism at the same time. They reject all other political ideologies. However, they try to attach themselves to ecology, and the deep ecologists would argue for radical holism, valuing nature, biocentric equality, strong sustainability. They would say that radical social change is simply not enough, and we need to have a new paradigm shift to cast off the mechanistic or atomistic view of the world. So these are our strands of ecologism, all along the spectrum from anthropocentrism, enlightened anthropocentrism, radical social change, right to the ecocentric perspective, biocentric equality of the deep ecologists.